The differences between Half-Life 1 and 2 are insanely vast. Being someone who played the sequel first, I remember being very confused by the type of game I was playing when I first tried Half-Life 1. It was the first 90s PC FPS that I really got into, having only played the occasional cover shooter like Killzone 2 or Resistance Fall of Man on PS3 before that. Also before this time, I had never understood the merits of PC gaming, as the idea of playing a game with a keyboard and mouse made absolutely no sense to me. Ironic now that I have immense amounts of trouble playing FPS games with a controller. But it's probably due to playing so many hours of Half-Life that I ever got used to such a strange control scheme in the first place. I first encountered Half-Life 1 by watching a friend of mine play his hard copy of the game in his house, staring at awe at this vast experience I'd completely skipped over to play Half-Life 2. He let me borrow said copy of the game, and I proceeded to marathon the whole thing in a weekend on my shitty Vaio laptop. I think I might have played much of it with a trackpad. I hope for my prior well-being that I eventually wised up and scrounged for a real mouse, but I can't really recall anymore. But let's get to the point of this video. Even back on my first playthrough of Half-Life 1, I felt that there was something intrinsically great about this game. At the time, I didn't think it was better than Half-Life 2, but as you're about to find out, I have a very different opinion on it now. As the years go by, I find myself enjoying Half-Life 2 less and less. Its story has already been played out for me multiple times, and the copious amount of waiting around for characters to shut the fuck up got old years ago. The gameplay is still super fun, but I can't help feeling that someday I'll even tire of that. For some people, that day has already come, being that the physics puzzles were never to their taste to begin with. And as if to cap off the eternity of sour taste the game has left in many of our mouths, we still haven't really seen a conclusion to the story. It's a real shame. So how was Half-Life 1 aged then? Like the finest wine you've ever fucking chugged. Sure, the opening section can be a tad repetitive, but once the game starts up, it almost never stops. Somehow, even without the lengthy story moments featured in Half-Life 2, Half-Life 1 is far longer and meatier than its sequel. The gunplay is near incomparable, even to its peers of the time. The movement is blissful and has excellent acceleration. The Black Mesa Valve created is bursting with so much character that you'd need multiple playthroughs just to understand it all. And I've never tired of any of it. I regularly get the urge to play some of my favorite levels just for fun, and every time I do, the game somehow gets better and better. I realize some secret area I never noticed before, or try a new tactic during a firefight. These are the things that make me question how these two games are related at all. Half-Life 2 doesn't really have amazing gunplay. It's fine, sure, and the shotgun is still super satisfying, but it lacks the edge that that original had, and I never feel like I need tactics in Half-Life 2. I never feel satisfied just moving my character in the sequel, given that the sprint bar runs out far too quickly and it doesn't feel nearly as swift as Half-Life 1's base movement speed. I barely even remember most of the locations featured in Half-Life 2, as most of them lack anywhere near the depth and character of Black Mesa. All of this is why I rarely, if ever, feel like playing the game anymore. And if I do, I'll likely just play Episode 2 instead, since its moments are far fresher in my mind. Oh, and where are those awesome enemies we fought all the time in Half-Life 1? Like, where did they go? Did Valve just forget to put them in? It's very strange. I don't mean to paint Half-Life 2 as a bad game. Just one with too many flaws to ignore, and too few improvements on its predecessor to even be deemed necessary existing. It's a story game first, with notable gameplay and aesthetics cast into a secondary role. It's a trend that we've seen time and time again with games like The Last of Us, Spec Ops: The Line, Hellblade, and many others over the years since Half-Life 2. Make an engaging story so that games can be taken seriously as art. Who needs gameplay when all that really matters is this fabrication of immersion? This lie that everyone believes for some reason, immersion. It's just another word for relaxing, or boring, forgettable, meaningless. I like all the games I mentioned a second ago, but I really only like them once, one time through. Because unlike the true classics of game design, these quote-unquote experiences can only be enjoyed one time, without being thrown in the garbage. Maybe you'll get some leftovers on a second playthrough if you're lucky. But Half-Life 2 isn't really in that same category. It just inspired a whole bunch of other idiots to grab the worst aspects of the game and call them innovative. This disdain I have for Half-Life 2 is perhaps overblown, I know that. But anytime I see the game, I just wish we got a real sequel to one of the best games ever made. But wait, we did. Join me tomorrow as we discuss why F.E.A.R is the real Half-Life 2. Until then, I hope you'll subscribe to see what other things I have planned for the future. Trust me, shit is about to get so real. I'd also like to shout out the infinitely awesome Flugmorph for being my one and only patron. If you'd like to join him in Shoutout Heaven, then throw $1 my way at Patreon. Links are in the description, by the way. Also remember to comment below to tell me why I'm wrong about your favorite game ever, even though you've likely never touched Half-Life 1 with a 10-foot crowbar. Bye-bye!